Sheldrake, a biologist who still had an open mind as to the cause of the circles.
Yes, they've done much better than I expected. Firstly, the performance at night was much more silent and much less obvious. I'd expected more lights and torches and much more noise. And when this contest started, 50 people disappeared into this field. Within a quarter of an hour, they'd been swallowed up into the darkness, and you hardly knew that there were circles being made all around. So that was very impressive, and I think the standard of these formations is extremely high. The subtlety of the way things are laid, the subtlety of the way the stalks are bent and that kind of thing may well differ from ones observed, which may be genuine in the field. But the overall impression is very, very good. I mean, they've done a fantastically good job.
Of course, in an organized contest, there was no need to worry about passing police cars or farmers with ferocious dogs. But the fact that it was all far easier than anyone thought to produce credible circles irritated those who believed in visitors from outer space. For them, anything which conflicted with their preconceived ideas was looked upon with suspicion. Michael Glickman, from the Center for Crop Circle Studies, still refused to believe that humans could be making the circles.
So who are these people? And why haven't we found them? No one else here claims to be a professional. So what's their motive?
I went around last summer and for some part this summer trying to find hoaxers and trying to catch them and so on. It's very difficult. It's so easy to go around in a field at night undetected. It's remarkably easy.
Yes, we did that last night.
Sound is damped, and you can't see very far. You can be fairly close to people who are actually looking for hoaxers.
Believers cross-examined Schnabel, saying there was no proof for what he was saying.
Satellites ever since.
Photographs.
Agents say they caught Portala buying drugs by simply bugging his hotel room and his car. But a federal judge still wants the government to answer the question, did it implant a microchip or not?
For the work, as these very early examples demonstrate. At first, his studio was the family garage. Later, his father built what they called his hobby house to accommodate Ray's expanding skills and vision.
And that was really the start of my experimentation. But I owe everything to this giant gorilla and the people reconstructing them and trying to put a film together. Of course, we became quite good friends, which lasted over the years.
At the time, Ray was working on Evolution. It was an attempt to tell the entire story of life's beginnings on Earth. And for a lone teenager, a hugely ambitious undertaking.
Evolution was a 16-millimeter project, very ambitious when I look back at it. But in my naive way, I thought I could do it if I took a year or a year and a half. So I started making all of these experiments with it. And I'm very grateful I did, even though the picture was never completed, because I got discouraged when I saw Fantasia. It covered the dinosaur sequence with Stravinsky's wonderful background music, and I thought, oh, they're covering the same ground, and they did it so beautifully, I might as well abandon it. But it wasn't for naught. I used all this footage that I had experimented with earlier as a sample of what I could do.
His mammoth got a role in another uncompleted film about an alien from Jupiter. A school friend played the monster's victim. World War II interrupted his career, but not his professional development. He made this little film to demonstrate the instructional potential of stop-motion photography. He passed the war years in a Signal Corps unit, making such sequences for Army training films. One of his colleagues was Theodore Geisel, later better known as Dr. Seuss. He made this model of Geisel's snafu. Mother Goose was up to date, technologically speaking, and Ray gave a hip flip to the 4 nursery rhymes he included in the first of what would become a short series of children's films. It took only 2.5 minutes to tell the tale of the spider and the world's most famous arachnophobe. The other films in the series would devote their full 10 minutes to a single story. The first of them was Little Red Riding Hood.
Riding Hood saw clearly his long, sharp teeth. But Granny, what great sharp teeth you have. All the better to eat you with, my dear.
Way of changing expressions on the figures, although I didn't want dialogue. If you have
Next. Originally, Ray had planned to include 10 or 15 titles in the series, but each new film was more technically sophisticated than the last. Rapunzel's hair, for instance, may have been an invitation to her prince, but it was a real challenge to the young animator. He found he was spending up to 4 months on each of these little films. If he were to do a long series, it would consume years of his life. Everything greedy King Midas touched turned to gold. Everything Ray touched turned to more time-consuming hours on a project with limited rewards. He decided to make a dozen, and Ray thinks it would have been the best of them all. But he completed only a couple of minutes worth of footage, seen here for the first time, when Ray received a call from Willis O'Brien offering him the chance to work with his beloved mentor on a feature film. That was Mighty Joe Young.
And look, another one, bro.
Trophy in hand at last night's Blockbuster Entertainment Awards. But as our Chris Raggi discovered, the Latin superstar was more than a winner. He was the main attraction. The star was more than a winner. He was the main attraction. Than a winner. He was the main attraction. The main attraction. Was more than a winner. He was the main attraction. Discovered the Latin superstar was more than a winner. He was the main attraction. We actually had one person say, he's like Elvis.
It's true. Another one better.
A dress disaster. I'm really sorry.
What's the matter? Falling down?
A little bit.
How are you?
Goddess, also known as Drew. The goddess, also known as the goddess, also known as the goddess, also known as Drew. The goddess, also known as Drew Barrymore. Yay!
Well, maybe that's your name. You couldn't contain yourself.
No, I give these things. I don't get them.
Mystical. They call me mystical because I'm unpredictable. You heard right. Bitches land them. Mystical because I'm unpredictable. You heard right. Bitches land them down. 16 other fattest hits. Look for the Southern Rollers Big Gaming from Beast Records and buy it today.
$8 value with each set of glow-in-the-dark Better blocks purchased in 1995.
Rectangular-shaped blocks are great, but they mostly build models that are rigid and straight. Better blocks bend, shape, curve, and glow in new cool colors that really show. Make an everyday castle light up at night.
Most of those accused and ultimately executed are women. As the Malleus carefully argues, their lack of intellect and willpower, along with insatiable sexual desires, make women especially susceptible to Satan's power.
Women also represent, par excellence, secret disorders, the secrets of women around childbirth, the secrets of women around sexual potency and sexual impotency and around fertility, and the belief about women's inferiority, about women's sexuality, about women's lack of resistance to the devil, women's easily being tempted by the devil, women's weak will. I think this goes very nicely with the metaphorical system in which women equal the forces of the occult, the forces of disorder.
Most of the women thought to be witches are over 40. The classic image of the witch is that of an evil mother. They are neither fertile nor nurturing. Witches are a perversion of femininity. They poison the well springs of life.
We felt surprised Thursday, the first time it's been successfully attacked. And over at the FBI headquarters, the agency shut its website down when there was an enormous spike in traffic. The site itself was not compromised.
We have really no idea that it's, the result of hackers or an organized group, but you can assume that because normally we get about 30 million hits a month, and within the space of an hour we had almost 750,000.
The Senate and FBI joined the Department of the Interior, National Park Service, and Department of Energy in facing recent technical difficulties linked to break-ins. This is HNN, the Hacker News Network. Computer insiders at this website keep before and after views of websites that have been cracked, that is, defaced by malicious hackers. Federal officials say recent attacks may be tied to support of Kevin Mitnick, who's jailed on computer-related charges, or are tied to prosecution of other suspected computer criminals. While some say these incidents are nothing more than cyber graffiti, the FBI is not amused.
The one thing that we can guarantee is that we will go after these people. It is a crime to do this. It's a crime to deny people access to these systems.
And after this week's web attack, the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms says there's an intense effort to discover how their site was defaced and to prevent further attacks. Marsha Walton.
And punish have been so calculated, so malignant and calculated, so malignant and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive their being repeated.
November 1945. For the first time in history, military and political leaders are tried as war criminals. The Nazis' defense? They were following orders.
Hermann Wilhelm Goering, on the counts of the indictment on which you have been convicted, the tribunal sentences you to death by hanging. Joachim von Ribbentrop, death by hanging. Wilhelm Keitel.
12 Nazis are sentenced to death. Goering, however, cheats the hangman by swallowing cyanide in his cell. It leads to the replacement of giant-sized computers. It is only the beginning of the new age of information. It is only the beginning of the new age of information.